Hi again. So this is our second and last roundtable of Big Data Spain 2003. I'm very pleased to have here three very interesting people. The three of them might add up to many years of experience. So starting from your right towards the left, Xavier Guerin. He's a VP of Southern Europe for MapR Technologies. Again, I don't know, 20 years of experience in IT and software, so I think he has a very interesting view of how big data technologies are being adopted in the last 12 months from his base in Paris. Oscar Mendez, you know him already, CEO of Paradigma and Stratio and co-founder of both companies. Both Paradigma and Stratio are instrumental part of this conference. And Chris Marshall from IBM. Chris has, again, a ton of experience mostly in financial services, but he has worked in many countries, not only in IT and also in consultancy, strategic consultancy, and he's a member of very important panels. So the way the roundtable is going to be organized is like yesterday's, if you were there. So basically, Oscar is going to ask some questions, and you are most welcome to ask yours through Twitter. You only need to add hashtag B for Bravo, D for Delta, Spain, followed by your question. If you need to join in with the microphone, please tell your name. So that's it. Let's start. Thank you.
Okay. The first question is, we know IBM is pushing really with a lot of effort and energy, big data, from your president to all the executives, and also MapR. But do you think the implementation or the adaptation of big data in the companies is with good speed, or is a bit slow, or what is your opinion about this? Maybe it depends in the countries. What do you think about that?
It's a very good question. I think there's a bit of a two-speed element to big data adoption. In the larger companies, and I tend to work in financial services, and I think you'll find that to a man, they are very conservative institutions, and there's a natural skepticism about any new technology from any vendor, frankly. So, and that skepticism is healthy. I think as big data specialists, we've got to be very wary of thinking, evangelizing too much, and being willing to say, you know, how does the technology fit with the specific business problem, the specific business challenge, the specific business baggage, if you like, that our clients actually have. Now, the bigger institutions, big data is still a bit of a skunk works activity. Most of my time is spent selling use cases to functional senior executives. Not the CEO, not the CFO, because it hasn't quite got there yet. They don't see it as a strategic imperative for them. It's gone beyond IT, certainly, but to say widespread adoption in the larger companies, a little bit, we're not there yet. A little bit different in government and telcos. I think there's a slightly different driver going on in those industries. Where I see the innovation actually is in the smaller companies. And I think that's exciting. And frankly, I wish we spent more time with the smaller organizations and less time with our bigger clients. But of course, the profit imperative pushes you in a certain direction. A lot of the innovation driven by technology is coming from the small institutions. There's no question about it. They've usually got very sharp business ideas. They don't have the baggage that the larger institutions, particularly in financial services, have. And they can move fast, and they can use the technology to help them move very fast and grab that value. Sooner or later, many of those projects, frankly, will fail, inevitably. And the innovation that those small companies have is going to be passed to the larger ones. And I think that's when it gets really exciting. Are we there yet? Probably not. Will we be there in 2 or 3 years' time? I suspect so.
When we started MapR in Europe 6 months ago, I went to a big data event in Paris, and one of the speakers said, "Big data in Europe is a little bit like teenage sex. Everybody thinks the others are doing something. Everybody would like to do something. Everybody saying they are doing something, but nobody's doing anything." And 6 months later, besides the joke, we've made great progress, I think, in Europe, especially in the vertical that you mentioned. I mean, telco, retail, finance, and the very large merchant websites are in front of the game. We are doing a lot of proof of concepts. Most of the companies don't know exactly what they want to do, but they want to start a proof of concept, and this is what we push them to do. Marissa from Yahoo said, if you don't know what to do, at least start to store the data, and this is a great advice. And this is a new concept called the data lake. We suggest the people to use old servers they don't use anymore, or to refurbish, to start a small cluster. You can download an Hadoop distribution, preferably MapR, of course, and you can start to do some tests, and you can familiarize yourself with the technology. It's quite simple. This is what we want to, what we tend to do at MapR, to make it easy, fast, and very simple to use. And then step by step, you can discuss with the different departments of your companies to propose some use case, and you can start to play with the technology.
Okay, thank you. And you have commented about the use cases, and this is really something very peculiar. In your experience, is the normal case is that the company asks for something because they have some real necessity, or is the partner, the technological partner, the one that has to propose the first use case or proof of concept for the first big data project, or what percentage would you say is its case? Because in our experience in Spain, to find a use case is one of the most difficult tasks. In most of the cases, we are the ones that have to find out what is the use case for that company or propose or things like this. So it's not something like technological, it's something like where to apply this technology.
At the risk of sounding repetitious, it does seem to boil down to two sort of distinct camps. There's a lot of technology-driven requirements, I would say, particularly from data warehouse specialists, looking to get faster throughput, better business intelligence out of their data warehouses and things like that. And a lot of those are specific business needs, and that's coming from IT or BI or somebody within the IT department. CIO considers this an agenda item. And they are usually where the institution, again, I'm speaking banks, come to us and say, we've got this problem, can Hadoop help? Can streams help? Complex event processing, can that help? That's one quite supply-driven or demand-driven sort of set of use cases. The other set, which is a bit more experimental, comes from the functional areas. And here we're talking of things like marketing intelligence, next best action, offer optimization, fraud. Fraud is a very big thing. Security, cybersecurity. These are functional requirements that have got a big data component within them. They're not just big data, but they've got a lot of a big data component that drives the initiative. And they want to know, how do they deliver the functional requirement? Not how do they implement a big data project. I mean, it's a means to an end, not an end in itself.
Yeah, I fully agree. There are two different cases. The first one is more, we have a problem, we have a technical problem. Is Hadoop able to solve this problem? And at what cost also? Because the more south you go in Europe, the more the economical question is important. And when you know that if you compare the cost of a terabyte for standard database around $80,000, and you compare to Hadoop for $800, I mean, this is a big, big question mark. And people want to challenge the new technology, especially for the investments. The second driver that we see is more like if we want to keep pace with the competition, we have only 20% of the data in-house in the company. So every decision we make are based on 20% of the available data. 80% of the data we can use are coming from outside. Okay, but we cannot use them with the traditional data warehouse solutions. So we need to adopt a new technology like Hadoop and make sure we get 20 plus 80%, at least 100% of the data available to make the right decision for the company and to keep up with the competition.
Other question is how to start. I mean, data lake is a very good idea, of course, and a very good recommendation to start storing the data. But with a small project, with a big project, what is your opinion about this?
We get asked this question virtually every day. There's no right answer. A lot depends on the institution itself. You've got to feel, where is the sponsorship for the project coming from? What other initiatives are going on within the organization? What's the current state of the data within the organization, the data warehouse? What operational projects are happening? What business initiatives are actually driving expenditure within the organization? Remember, you always want to show success pretty quickly. I mean, that's kind of part of the game here. People don't have tolerance for big projects. And yet, ironically, one of the biggest projects that actually drives success in this space is one that most institutions are scared of doing, and that is information governance, data quality, this sort of thing. What tends to happen is that people put off those sort of big infrastructure projects and instead want to go for quick wins. That's fine as long as you can expand that project and make sure it's consistent with your broader strategic agenda, your strategic imperatives, your IT architecture decisions. Skunkworks may look good in the short term, but in the end may actually create more trouble than it's worth. And I think that's the danger, and that's the balancing act that enterprise architects are certainly facing right now. I would suggest focusing on small projects that actually deliver some sort of ROI in a matter of a few months rather than a year, and make sure that those projects are in line with enterprise architect strategy. And most of the people we talk to, frankly, are enterprise architects in the beginning part of a project. So whether it's fraud, operational analytics, whether it's augmentation of the data warehouse, these are specific projects that can build into bigger things, bigger and better things. But they only build and they only grow if they're consistent with the existing infrastructure that you have and where it's going, and also with the business imperatives that the institution faces. If it's not aligned with these things, you're wasting your time.
We always recommend to start with a small environment. You can start with 4 or 5 nodes. Just put the distribution on top and start to play with it. We have customers running on 2,000 nodes, 1,200 nodes. That's the 2 largest customers worldwide. But the management of the platform from 4 nodes or 2,000 is the same. So start small and grow fast.
What about the public sector? This is different in any country, I know, but do you think they are embracing this technology or they are a bit slow embracing the technology?
Good question. I think that depends an awful lot on the sort of political imperatives in each country. It's hard to give a generic answer. I can speak for the UK, which I am familiar with. There's a big push there to do open data platforms. I think of there's treasury.gov in the UK, and there they've got a commitment to basically put public data in an open data platform and make it as a vehicle for big data analysis by the consumers of that data, which is basically taxpayers. It's people like you and me. And the idea is that by providing that big data platform, you provide a vehicle to come up with or encourage innovative uses of that data, which create value for the taxpayer, create improvements in services. I mean, the classic example would be things like, how many times does your bus service arrive late outside your house? Or how does your local council really spend its money at a level of detail that, frankly, hitherto we've never been able to get to? How much do they spend on fixing the potholes down the street in your neighborhood? And that's sort of the direction that we see big data in government certainly moving towards. It's almost about justification of how the government spends your tax money, and also encouraging the broader community to develop applications and uses of that data to improve those services that government offer.
I agree with you. The only places we see the government really pushing strong on Hadoop is the Defense Department, either in the US, either in Europe. I know in France they have a big cluster, but obviously we are not allowed to talk about it.
Of course. Okay. Other question I think the companies are, or the people here is asking themselves is, do I have the knowledge or the people to start with this technology, or is there any real requirement, or my company has to have some level of to be mature enough to start with these technologies, or I can start from zero? And also related to this, how to train the people? Or is it better to incorporate the people, new people to hire, or to train with this technology to people I have in the company?
I think nobody has all the knowledge. I think there's an element of humility about this business that you've got to adopt straight up. You're always learning. You never stop learning in this business, and that's the exciting part of it, and that's also the challenge. Whether you're new, fresh out of high school at 17, or you're an old person like myself at 55, you're always learning stuff. You're always learning stuff. The attitude should be one of continuous experimentation. You try stuff out, fail quickly. If it fails, most of the time it will fail, I guarantee it. But sometimes it will succeed, and the hope is that with a portfolio of projects, enough of them are going to succeed to justify the whole effort. I always like the quote from Henry Ford, the inventor of the Model T. He said, fail better. And I think that's exactly right. You learn from your mistakes, and then you move on to the next thing. And I think that should be the attitude. And frankly, that's a problem I see in the educational system. It doesn't encourage people to fail very frequently. And it's all about failing often. And there will be successes, and you want to leverage those successes. And obviously, you want to make the most of the successes you do have. But the only way that's going to work is if you can actually graft the technology into the context of a particular business problem. And one of the themes I would say in a lot of the education going on for big data is that we're not doing enough thinking about sort of business process redesign associated with big data. I mean, most big data specialists end up being partly business modelers, business engineers, really, as much as technologists. And I think we need to keep that in the back of our minds when we think about all of these technologies, whether it's, mobile platform or cognitive computing or cloud or big data. They've got an awful lot of business re-engineering associated with it. And so many projects fail that could have been a success with a little bit of business savvy attached to the underlying technology.
Yeah, Hadoop is really complex. How many people have tested Hadoop in the room? It's easy? Okay, one of the things MapR is doing well, because it took us 2 years to develop a layer in between Hadoop and the enterprise. We have developed a file system in C to make it much easier to start with Hadoop and to manage Hadoop. So we access the cluster in NFS mode. So it's very, very easy, very, very fast. And it makes it very simple for you to start a new cluster. Then what we bring also is the capability for you to start in the cloud, because our two major partners in the cloud are Amazon and Google. You can start using Hadoop and the MapR for free in the cloud with these two companies.
Okay. There is also a lot of buzz about data-driven decisions, data-driven companies, and that big data is going to help to the companies to use this. And sometimes this is like very high expectations because it is difficult and it depends of the company to be mature enough and so on. But reading some predictions of IDC, they were saying that for the data-driven companies to change to these models, the companies, there were some similarities with the ERPs. The big projects that maybe 5 years or 6 years ago the companies were doing with SAP or other products. And in fact, that to become a data-driven company, most of the companies will have large projects, and maybe 50% of the projects will fail, exactly the same that happened with the ERPs, that it was really very complicated. Do you think this is true, or could be true in some fashion, or what do you think about this, the data-driven companies and these expectations?
Well, I always think of the Gartner Group hype cycle, right? You know, those of you who haven't seen it, for big data, I think we're probably very close. I don't know, must be quite close to the peak of expectations for big data. And almost inevitably, those expectations will not, I suspect, be entirely realized by any organization. I mean, the truth of the matter, big organizations do not make analytically based decisions or data-based decisions. The big decisions, whether to buy this company, whether to go into this new market, in the end become questions of politics, faith, hope, political pressure. All of these things really drive a lot of the decisions. Data and analytics have got a key role to play in middle management. I think that's definitely true. And big data is part of that story. It's not all of it, but it's part of it. The larger the decision, however, I would argue, ironically, maybe the harder it will be for big data on its own to drive real decision making, precisely because it's based on historical data, right? The real innovation doesn't come from looking at what other people are doing or what people are saying right now. The real innovation comes from taking a bit of a leap based on informed judgment, based on data, certainly. But still, there's an element of executive faith that's got to be there, supported by data, but never driven by data.
Yeah, that's true. What we see as a big issue for companies to adopt this kind of technology is the fact that all the different departments are not friends always. And if you cannot mix the data from the different departments, you don't get the essence of the benefit of this new technology. So when I go to customers' side to discuss, if we don't have the business representative and the IT representative in the same room, we know it's going to be difficult for the company to adopt the technology. That's one of the main constraints we see. The second one, I think, is because data is becoming really, really part of the strategy of the company. There's a new function called data strategist or innovation manager, or the person that will be responsible for the big data initiative. And it's really interesting to see that the way the person is ranked in the organization is going to show the importance of the big data initiative in the company. Depending on who the guy will report, will it be the CEO, will it be the CIO, or the marketing or the IT division? It gives a good understanding of how important the big data initiative will be in the company.
I have a question. Actually, build on that point. Do you see your projects coming from the CIO, or do you see them coming from other parts of the business?
There's no one answer to that. I think most of the time the projects are coming from the business. Most of the time people are struggling because they see the competition going faster, so they want to cope up. And sometimes from the CIO, but in mid-sized companies, not from the large one.
Yeah, also that we have seen is that maybe the leadership of the project or of the technology comes from the IT or the business intelligence area. So they are like the sheriffs of the big data initiative, but the projects come always from business, and sometimes directly comes the necessity for a big data project from marketing or departments like this. And if the IT department or business intelligence is leading the initiative, the big data proof of concept or first project, it will take more time to close it and to sell it, because they have to find the use case, then convince the business area to do it, get the budget to do it, and then it will take a lot more time. If it comes directly from the business area, okay, some part of the you have solved a lot of steps, so it is easier.
Well, I mean, just to build on that point, there's an awful lot of baggage in big organizations, whether it's a commitment to a particular data warehouse, a particular architecture, a particular set of decisions made long ago that may have long lost their business justification. These allegiances particularly within IT, are a real constraint to actually innovation. I mean, frankly, we often face a situation where the functional user comes to us and says, give me some sort of technology that allows me to get past our business intelligence team because it's too slow. They don't know what they're doing, it's too difficult, too hard, whatever. And then we end up almost trying to sell in a very difficult situation, right? Because we want to keep the IT department happy. We want the BI team to be happy. We want the functional users to be happy. But inevitably, you're negotiating slightly different agendas. And the success of the technology is usually, more than anything else, driven by how well you negotiate those different players.
Yeah, and I agree completely, because about this, to have most of the departments in the meeting, because otherwise the project will start with a possible failure in the horizon. Mainly systems. The systems department, well, big data is a complex technology. You have a big stack of products, and these products usually are not in the roadmap of the system department, so they don't know how to install it, how to give any maintenance to the products. Maybe you have convinced the business area, the IT department, but if you cannot install it in production, then you have a really big problem. So it is the best way is to have involved the most departments of the company in the first project in the meeting.
But that's a little bit counter to the idea of starting small. I mean, so you've got this horrible
but
balance.
But
to deal
even,
with, right?
as we said, with 4 nodes, you will need the system department, even for one machine. If the system guys say, no way Hadoop is going to touch my machines, big data project is closed. So, and next question, I think it is about technologies. We are like in a crossroad, because we have the classical technologies, the big data technologies. Of course, it is the best is a combination, but in some cases, do you think it is going to be a replacement, or in some use case you are replacing previous technologies with big data technologies? And especially in the IBM case, because you have products for big data, for BI, you have Cognos, you have relational databases, and so on. Are you cannibalizing some of the market, or are you competing between departments, maybe for a customer? Okay, this solution is better, no, this one. And
That never happens at IBM. Of course it happens. I mean, to some extent, all of these technologies, you know, whether it's data warehouse technologies or data models or ETL tools or big data tools, cognitive computing tools, mobile platform tools, they all, to some extent, you know, there's overlap, inevitably. You're always trying to figure out, and this is a challenge of all the vendors face, certainly not unique to IBM. You're trying to map to a particular client problem, what are the best technologies to use for that situation. At the same time, of course, we're all incentivized to sell our own little bits of the portfolio, and that's a difficult issue, right? All big organizations have to sort of negotiate their way through that. Is it cannibalizing our existing offering? For the most part, I don't think it is. A lot of the big data technologies around unstructured data or velocity, or data in with velocity, data in motion. And for the most part, traditional, you know, data warehouse technologies don't really fit that story particularly well. So for big data especially, we're looking at things like social media analysis. We're looking at understanding internal fraud from the perspective of all the emails that have been written by that particular person. Or we're looking at analyzing transactions from an anti-money laundering perspective and looking at all the links that that particular counterparty might have with other counterparties. Now, this is stuff that doesn't naturally reside in traditional data warehouse technologies. So there's overlap, but I think for the most part, the problems we're looking at are a little bit different. Will eventually big data be subsumed under a broader title of data warehouse technology? I suspect it probably will be eventually. But I'm very wary, personally, of big data being viewed as an end in itself. I think we should always keep in the back of our mind, big data is just a set of tools that help us deal with a particular set of problems that traditional technologies weren't very good at. The addition of these new technologies, the old technologies, will result in a better solution. And then there'll be other problems to solve. It's not the end in itself.
Okay. Do you think you're replacing some systems or products in some of your projects or combining?
I think it depends on the use case, as you mentioned. I mean, there will be some use case where we will be a completely new technology, and there will be some use case where we will complement the technology, and especially in the data warehouse offload, which is one of the low-hanging fruits of the technology today. If you offload some data warehouse data because of the cost of the traditional solution, you will keep your traditional solution, and you will build easily an Hadoop cluster, an Hadoop solution connecting with your traditional data warehouse. Someone yesterday mentioned that technology dies slowly, and I fully agree with that. I mean, we still have mainframes on the market running. We do some of mainframe offloads on Hadoop now, so you can think about the time it takes for the technology to die, but it's more a complementary solution than a replacement solution for sure.
Last one, because I think there are a lot of questions waiting for. We think about marketing in the sales department, telecom sector, banking, and these are really sectors that big data will no doubt help them. But what about the industrial sector? I mean, I think IBM had a congress last month, and your president said every time the machines and the services will be more intelligent, more interconnected, and so on. Here I want to relate this question with the Internet of Things, machine to machine, and so on, because machine to machine and Internet of Things is something we have been talking about for 10 years, maybe, but still it is not a reality. Do you think in the industrial sector, the systems, the products will be more interconnected? there will be some standardization to allow to interconnect and to talk between them? Or do you think this is science fiction almost and it will take maybe 10, 20 years?
Good question. There's no
Be careful
not
because
much doubt.
your president was saying that.
No, absolutely. I mean, the Internet of Things is something that's going to happen, whether we like it or not, I suspect. I mean, there's lots of barriers in the way, and standards are probably the biggest of them, not so much the underlying technology. In my area, in banking and financial services, we're seeing a lot of interest in operational analytics. So it's analyzing things like, this database update didn't go correctly, and as a result, this caused the data in some underlying subsystem, some valuation system, to go wrong, and that caused, the feeds that went to a particular trader, front office trader, to be incorrect, and the trader got upset about that. So what's interesting is we're trying to use the technology to analyze deep, buried system problems and how they affect downstream end uses of that data. And people like Splunk and ourselves are doing the same sorts of things, trying to analyze what are the data about operations. Now, that's a little bit different from the Internet of Things, to be fair, which tends to be much more industrial, more about sensor integration and intelligent processes and stuff like that. But I suspect it's not going to start with your fridge talking to your washing machine. It's going to start with people doing centralized analysis of operational information, and then based on that, conclusions being drawn. That's typically the way we're seeing it in financial services. I think the people who are doing the best job at this are actually the telcos and some of the energy companies, which are doing very interesting things. I think of things like smart meters, smart utilities. I mean, they're doing very interesting things in that space. And I think the financial services sector has got a lot to learn from that. And maybe they start to all converge, I don't know.
What about you? Are you making some use case combining big data with machine-to-machine, Internet of Things, or things like this?
Yesterday we mentioned the the collecting garbage company using Hadoop to know exactly where the trucks were and how to do some economies on the transport, the location, combining the data with the weather forecast, everything. I think this trend of connected machines is driven by the money anyway. And if you take the utilities, for example, that you mentioned, in France, for example, the EDF is doing a proof of concept around these meters, home meters, where you can connect and they can make sure they understand the way you use the power and how to reduce the consumption. So this is really much driven by the money and how to make sure we save the power. So utilities is a great driver sector for that.
So, if you want, Ruben?
Yeah, thanks. So there are many questions about real cases, okay? Now, because this roundtable combines France, the UK, and most of IBM areas, and also Spain, I think you guys are free to say names. It doesn't hurt, okay? So some of the questions about user cases are from very different industries. Iago Pereiro asks about use cases involving multimedia information. Now, because the setup of IBM is so radically different to MapR and also from Stratio, I would say, the three of you have very different views probably from the point of view of your daily experience. So, multimedia information, use cases. Can you produce some examples?
Well, there's a large bank in Chile that is using, I know of, that's using multimedia. Actually, they're using video information about people accessing ATMs. And they're using it for fraud analysis. So they're doing facial recognition. limited facial recognition, I have to be honest with you, but they're using it as part of analysis of theft around ATMs. So, that's kind of one of the more interesting ones in the financial sector. To be honest, we tend not to use multimedia that much in financial services. I mean, most of the focus tends to be on transactions, behaviors, long-term behaviors that people have with those transactions, with their systems, with their banks, with their accounts. And multimedia is probably less relevant in that sense. That's not true for some of the more security-oriented examples. It's probably the place I'd look for that sort of case.
That's right. There's a question by, well, let's go through it later, Roberto and Suini, but let's move on maybe to the next.
Well, of course, I think the question is really related to the media sector because it is the sector where you have really more multimedia, and we are working in Spain with the biggest, I am not going to say the companies because I don't know, but with some of the biggest companies in Spain for TV, for newspapers and so on. And it is a pretty easy use case, and I think everybody is thinking about that, is the behavioral customization, of course, in all if you have a website with a lot of content, and the media sector has really a huge quantity of contents and contents of quality, that you have to do is to personalize that content for the user that is trying to access. So big data is really the technology for that, because you can store, and here we can follow the recommendation about start storing the data. You can store the data, the interactions that the user is doing in the website, and then maybe you don't have the technology or the company is not mature enough to adapt the website to the user the next time the user is accessing the website. But anyway, start to store it, start to analyze, to apply algorithms, and to be ready, because when you change the website with some responsive technology or any technology, you will be able to adapt the site with the contents for that user, with the recommendations, and you will increase the click-through, the time of the users in the website, and so on. So for the media sectors, really, this start using it now, well, it is a must. And we are here helping the TVs, the newspapers, and so on. It's a ROI very clear for those use cases.
Yeah, we mentioned yesterday also in Rob's presentation the whiskey distributor in Japan using facial recognition as a multimedia purpose also. But the one I really like is the India government initiative to create identity for the population. It's already 60 petabytes of data that have been created on a cluster with Hadoop technology and MapR. And they take fingerprints, they mix with the retina picture for every individual in India. They have completed the project about 60% now, and they still have 40% of the population, but each time they do the retina picture and the fingerprints registration, so it takes a lot of data, but it's much more easy with a Hadoop cluster than any other technology.
I think the question is also pretty good, because there is a problem with the multimedia contents. Maybe it is voice, it is not text, or it is even videos. So you have special technology to be able to process that, voice recognition, and to pass this to test, even face recognition that we were seeing some examples yesterday. So if you combine big data with these special technologies, really you can analyze and get value not only from text, which is the pretty easy one, but also from voice and also from videos, and this is a lot of value that we have there. For example, I think all of us, we are working about trying to retain the customers for the company. No, this is a very clear use case. It is much cheaper to retain a customer, to not lose him, than to win a new customer. So the big data systems are being used to get data about the customer, data from the CRM or the emails or the call centers or whatever, and then maybe it is voice, maybe it is text, and try to identify, okay, this guy is saying he's not very happy about the service, or he's complaining, or he's saying something, we are going to lose this customer, and the best action for this one is to do this or this or this, and then the system is learning. And here we have the machine learning associated with the big data systems, and this is a very powerful combination. So really, a very important part of the non-structured data is voice, is videos, and you should take it into account.
But I would like to just comment, though, that an awful lot of what we talk about with media is really data about the media. So it's metadata, if you like. And the manipulation of metadata is relatively straightforward. Obviously, storing the underlying, thumbprint image or video, or whatever it may be. But the analytics required to actually do the analysis of the video itself or of the fingerprint is still, it's a little bit out there, frankly. I mean, and it's not robust. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. The technologies that people are talking about, cognitive computing, the ability to do, massive heuristic-based search and use that with evidence to come up with hypotheses. I mean, that's going to be the next thing after big data. What I wouldn't do necessarily is base the success of big data on projects that require technologies that aren't quite there yet. I mean, I think there's better use cases than, necessarily our analysis of video per se. I think the clickstream analysis is a great one because, there's lots of people looking to see how do you access a website. Did I click on this picture or this advert, and then did I give up halfway through entering a form and do something else? And there's wonderful things people can do with that. But just be a bit wary, and I always find this in technical groups, be a bit wary of going towards the most sexy use case, because that's usually the least financially viable, in my experience.
Completely agree.
Okay, the next question is quite pertinent, and I'm sure your clients have asked it many times, by Roberto Ansuini. How to deal with data protection when using big data cloud platforms?
This one is for you.
You have 5 minutes.
The question for the cloud provider.
Yes, actually it's more of a cloud computing, but I don't know, maybe...
I can speak for MapR, but not especially for the cloud provider.
Well, I think there is something like a fashion to combine big data with cloud, and really this is because the problem with the systems are not able to incorporate the technology sometimes, not always, but with the necessary speed. So it is easier to go to cloud and to shift to cloud, and then you have this use case or proof of concept. You want to implement it pretty fast, and then the best or easiest way is go to cloud. And then you are doing this project for banking. And the data of the customers of the bank is going to go to the cloud. And then the people really is very nervous, and it is pretty logic. So how we are solving this? Really here the best way that we have found is to use semi-cloud solutions. I mean, you can put some part of the system in the on-premise in the company, and here you are anonymizing the data, or with cryptographic technology, converting some data before you download or upload this data to the cloud. And then in the cloud, you can convert, analyze with Hadoop, with the systems, and do whatever you want. And it doesn't matter if there is a leak of contents or data or anything, because nobody is going to be able to say, okay, this guy is a customer of this bank, and then I will attack him because he has this product or whatever. And also in the other sense, I mean, when the data is coming back to the bank, we can convert to the real customer or to the ID or to the product or whatever, and then they can see, okay, this customer, the best is to make this marketing action or this newsletter or anything. So combining technologies with cryptographic, and there are a lot of really technical, very good technology to solve this. But anyway, it is not so easy in some cases.
Yeah, I would say that the problem of Hadoop technology, it has not been designed for enterprise applications. It was designed to store data from the web, so we saw a good opportunity there. And the mission of my company is to make sure that you will get the same level of SLA from your critical application on Hadoop than from on standard solutions. And so that's why we provide features like snapshot, like mirroring, disaster recovery. And what we see from customer experience is that most of the time they start in the cloud with a limited amount of machine, just to make sure they understand the benefit of the technology. Sometimes they continue in the cloud. It depends on your budget, of course. But most of the time they come back on premises when they go into production, because they have the security of the solution we provide. But most of the time, as you mentioned, they do a copy in the cloud. So they get denser machine, more density, and they can make a mirror from their production side in the cloud anywhere.
Yeah. Also, there is something that we have seen. Netflix is doing it, and we recommend. And it is a very, very smart use of the cloud systems. Cloud is pretty easy and pretty fast to do things there, but it is not as cheap as people usually think. In fact, it could be quite expensive, especially if you go to pay per use, because then the seconds or hours that you are using it have a higher cost. So really, sometimes it is very expensive. We are helping companies to move from cloud systems to on-premise because the monthly cost was too high. But Netflix is making something that really we like, and it is to combine. They have on-premise systems, and this is for the normal use. But in the USA, you have these parties, Halloween, and the Super Bowl, and so on. And then Netflix is having there some peaks because the people is renting movies and doing really high peaks. And then the systems really cannot work with that effort. Those peaks, they cannot handle it. So handle them, and then that they are doing is using Amazon on demand just for the peaks, maybe for 4 hours only, because normally their systems are prepared for the load that they have. And in this way, this is really very smart, and you can do it in several cases. So always be imaginative about how to use the cloud, because there are very smart solutions there.
Yeah, I don't think there's any banks that are really aggressively using open cloud for production systems. I just don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I think private cloud for production systems is clearly the way people are going at the moment, at least. In the longer term, when anonymization and encryption technology gets better and better, maybe there's a story that you can tell which combines the benefits of control, internal, of the data with, basically making a fixed cost into a variable cost, which is what cloud is really all about. I don't think we're there yet. I'd be always a bit wary of combining two relatively new technologies in the same business application. Work on cloud independently of big data and vice versa, at least for now. Bring them together when you feel confident about the use case, but don't push it too hard, too quickly.
Okay, we run out of, sorry. Yep, so we run out of time. Basically also the question was related not much about cloud really, but about data protection. I think there is some awareness out there in the media about how data is being accessed actually, by whom and why. And so yeah, security concerns are clear in banking and in many areas, but also about data protection. So I will put the question back to the audience. Would anybody would like to contribute with any case of data protection in any country, any company, any success story of effective data protection in big data? And that's the last question before we go to the short break. Okay, very good. So thank you very much to Xavier, Chris, and Oscar. It's been very interesting. Thank you.